Evelyn had learned to navigate the world through sound and touch and scent when her eyes failed her, which happened more often than she liked to admit. Today, the winter sun was too bright against fresh snow, and she'd felt the familiar burning sensation behind her eyes that warned her she had maybe an hour before her vision would start to blur and fade. She should have turned back to the Frost Peak Pack territory immediately, should have abandoned her delivery of woven blankets to the human village 3 hours north. But she'd promised the order would arrive today, and Evelyn kept her promises even when her body betrayed her. Her condition had started 6 years ago when she was 15 and got caught in a blizzard that lasted 8 hours. She'd been on her first solo hunting trip, trying to prove to her uncle that she could be useful despite being an orphaned Omega with no prospects. The exposure to the intense glare of sun reflecting off snow had damaged her retinas permanently. Now, whenever, conditions were too bright, too reflective, too much light hitting her sensitive eyes. She went temporarily blind for hours, or sometimes days. The Frost Peak Pack viewed her as defective, a broken Omega who couldn't even handle winter, which was ridiculous considering they lived in the northern mountains, where winter lasted 8 months out of the year. Her uncle Marcus had taken her in after her parents died in an avalanche when she was 12, but he'd never let her forget that she was a burden. He'd loved her mother, his younger sister, and blamed her for dying and leaving him stuck with a niece he hadn't wanted. Evelyn had learned to be quiet and useful and never ask for more than the bare minimum. She worked as a weaver, creating blankets and tapestries that were prized throughout the region for their quality. It was indoor work that didn't require her to be in bright light, perfect for someone with her limitations. She lived alone in a small cabin at the edge of pack territory, rarely attending pack gatherings or social events. At 21, she'd never been courted, never been kissed, never been looked at as anything except a defective Omega who'd probably die young from some stupid accident related to her condition. She was fine with that, had made her peace with a life of solitude, had convinced herself she preferred being alone to being pied. The burning in her eyes intensified as she trudged through knee-deep snow on her way home from the village. The sky was overcast, but the snow cover was fresh and pristine, reflecting what little light filtered through the clouds with painful intensity. Evelyn squinted against the glare, trying to see the trail markers that would guide her back to pack territory, but her vision was already starting to blur at the edges. She had maybe 20 minutes before she'd be completely blind. She picked up her pace, nearly running despite the deep snow and her exhaustion from the long walk. If she could just make it to familiar territory, she could navigate by memory and scent, even without vision. She knew every tree and rock near her cabin could find her way home blind if she had to. Then the sky opened up and snow began falling in thick, heavy flakes that turned the world white in seconds. Evelyn stopped walking, her heart sinking with dread. This wasn't a normal snowfall. This was a blizzard coming on fast and furious with no warning. The wind picked up, whipping snow into her face and disorienting her completely. She spun in a circle trying to find the trail, trying to remember which direction was home. But everything looked the same, and her vision was failing fast. The world went gray, then white, then black. Just like that, between one breath and the next, Evelyn was completely blind in the middle of a blizzard, with no idea which direction was safe. She stood perfectly still, fighting panic, trying to think logically. If she kept moving, she might walk in circles or off a cliff. If she stayed still, she'd freeze to death. Neither option was good. Her sensitive hearing picked up nothing but howling wind and the hiss of falling snow. Her usually reliable sense of smell was overwhelmed by cold and dampness. She was lost, blind, and dying, all because she'd been too stubborn to turn back when her eyes first started hurting. Evelyn sank down against a large tree trunk, pulling her cloak tight around her shivering body. At least it would be a peaceful death, cold and alone, just like she'd lived. Maybe that was fitting. Maybe this was the moon goddess's way of showing her that defective Omegas didn't deserve better than this. She thought about her mother who died in winter mountains just like this. Her mother who'd been a seer, who'd had visions of the future that no one believed until they came true. Her mother who'd seen her own death coming but had gone on that patrol anyway, because duty mattered more than safety. Evelyn had inherited a weak shadow of that gift, saw paths and possibilities when her physical sight failed, but she'd never told anyone because her uncle had always said her mother's visions were madness that got her killed. As Evelyn's body temperature dropped and her mind started to fog with hypothermia, she felt her hidden gift activate. She couldn't see the world around her, but suddenly she could see paths, glowing lines of possibilities spreading out from where she sat. Most of them were gray and faded, leading to her frozen corpse being found in spring. But one path glowed bright silver, pulsing with life and warmth and possibility. That path led north and slightly east, away from where she thought her pack territory was. Evelyn was too cold and too scared to question why. She started to stand, intending to follow that glowing path, even though she couldn't physically see where she was going. When she heard it, a howl, low and deep and close, cutting through the storm like a beacon. The sound resonated in her chest, made her wolf stir inside her for the first time in years, made something in her soul recognize and respond. The silver path in her mind's eye pointed directly toward that howl. Evelyn pushed to her feet, her legs shaking with cold and exhaustion. "Help!" She screamed into the storm, her voice raw. "Please, whoever you are, I can't see. I need help." The howl came again, closer this time, and then Evelyn felt something large and warm press against her legs, fur thick and soft under her freezing fingers. A wolf, enormous based on the height and breadth of the body she was touching. Her hand found a head easily the size of her torso, and she knew this was no ordinary pack wolf. This was an alpha, powerful and massive, and he'd come in response to her cry for help. A voice spoke, rough and deep, and partially shifted, more growl than human speech. "Hold on to my fur. Don't let go no matter what. I'll get you somewhere safe." Evelyn didn't hesitate. She grabbed 2 fistfuls of thick fur at the wolf's shoulders and held on like her life depended on it, which it absolutely did. The wolf began moving through the snow with surprising speed and confidence, clearly able to see and navigate despite the blizzard conditions. Evelyn stumbled along behind him, her legs burning with effort, her body so cold she couldn't feel her fingers or toes anymore. But she didn't let go. The silver path in her mind blazed brighter with every step, confirming she was going the right direction, even if she couldn't physically see it. She had no idea how long they walked. It felt like hours, but was probably less than one. Time became meaningless, just an endless struggle through snow and wind while holding on to warm fur that was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Eventually, the wind died down slightly, and she felt stone beneath her feet instead of snow. They were in some kind of shelter. "We're in a cave," the rough voice said, and she felt the wolf's body shift and change beneath her hands until she was touching bare, human skin instead of fur. She jerked her hands back quickly, her face flushing despite the cold. "Sorry, I should have warned you. I was shifting. Stay right there. Don't move. I need to get a fire started. Evelyn stood perfectly still in the darkness behind her useless eyes, listening to the sounds of her rescuer moving around the space. Footsteps on stone, the scrape of something being dragged, the crack and rustle of wood being arranged, then the blessed warmth of fire blooming to life, though she couldn't see the flames, only feel their heat slowly starting to thaw her frozen body. "Come toward my voice," the man said gently. "There's a fire here and some old blankets someone left. You need to get warm before hypothermia kills you." Evelyn shuffled forward carefully, her hands outstretched until warm fingers caught hers and guided her down to sit on something soft. Blankets, old but clean, spread over what felt like a smooth stone floor. The fire was close enough that she could feel its warmth on her face. Her rescuer draped another blanket around her shoulders, and she clutched it gratefully, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. "Thank you," she managed through numb lips. "You saved my life." "I thought I was going to die out there." "You would have died," the man said matter-of-factly. "That's one of the worst blizzards I've seen in years. What were you doing out there alone?" "Delivering blankets to the human village," Evelyn said, embarrassed by how stupid it sounded now. "I should have turned back when the weather turned, but I'd promised they'd arrive today. I didn't expect a blizzard to hit so fast." "The storms in these mountains are unpredictable," the man agreed. His voice was calmer now, less shifted but still deep and commanding in a way that spoke of authority. "And you mentioned you can't see. Is that permanent or temporary?" Evelyn's face burned with shame. "Temporary. Usually, I have a condition. My eyes are damaged from an old injury. And when there's too much bright light, especially sun reflecting off snow, I go blind for hours, or sometimes days. I can usually navigate by scent and sound well enough to get home, but the blizzard disoriented me completely. I had no idea which way was safe." She waited for the pity or disgust or dismissal she was used to hearing when people learned about her condition. Instead, the man just made a thoughtful humming sound. "That must be difficult to live with, especially in the northern territories where snow is constant half the year. But I noticed you have excellent spatial awareness, despite not being able to see. You didn't stumble once on the way here, even though the terrain was rough, and your hearing seems exceptional. You're adapted remarkably well to your limitation." Evelyn blinked her useless eyes in surprise. "Most people just tell me I'm defective, that an Omega who can't handle winter isn't worth much in a mountain pack." "Then most people are idiots," the man said bluntly. "You're not defective. You've survived a permanent injury and learned to compensate for it. That takes intelligence and determination. Those are valuable traits in anyone, Omega or not." Something warm bloomed in Evelyn's chest, something she hadn't felt in years, hope maybe, or just gratitude that someone saw her as more than her limitation. "What's your name?" she asked. "I should know the name of the person who saved my life." There was a brief pause, like he was considering his answer. "Orion," he said finally. "Just Orion. And you are Evelyn from the Frost Peak Pack, though I'm just a weaver, not anyone important." "Everyone is important to someone," Orion said quietly. "And anyone who creates something beautiful with their hands has value beyond measure. Don't diminish yourself, Evelyn." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling fire and the howling wind outside the cave. Evelyn's body slowly thawed, painful pins and needles sensation as feeling returned to her. Extremities. Her wet clothes were starting to steam from the fire's heat. She knew she should probably change into something dry, but she hadn't brought spare clothes. and she absolutely wasn't stripping down to her undergarments in front of a strange male. Sight or no sight? "The blankets are fairly dry," Orion said, apparently reading her mind. "If you want to wrap up in them and hang your wet clothes by the fire to dry, I promise I'll turn my back and not look. You'll warm up faster in dry covering." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. She heard him move away, his footsteps retreating to what she assumed was the far side of the cave. Fumbling in the dark behind her eyes, she managed to strip off her soaked dress and cloak, wrapping herself in the musty but blessedly dry blankets he'd mentioned. Her undergarments were damp, but not soaked, and she kept those on for the sake of modesty. "I'm decent," she called out once she was thoroughly cocooned in blankets. Orion returned to the fire, moving with easy confidence that Evelyn envied. She heard him arranging her clothes near the heat, probably spreading them to dry faster. "The storm sounds like it's getting worse," he observed. "We might be stuck here for a while. At least a day, maybe 2. 2 days?" Evelyn's voice rose in panic. "But my pack will worry. My uncle will think I died. And you must have people waiting for you, too. We can't just stay here for 2 days. We don't have much choice," Orion said calmly. "Going out in this storm would be suicide, even for someone with perfect vision. For you, it would be guaranteed death. We have shelter, fire, and some emergency supplies someone left in here. We'll survive just fine for a couple days." Evelyn wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Still, the thought of being trapped in a cave for 2 days with a strange male made her nervous for reasons that had nothing to do with danger. She was hyper-aware of how close he was, of the warmth radiating from his body, of his masculine scent cutting through the smoke from the fire. Her wolf, dormant for years, was stirring restlessly inside her. "Tell me about yourself," Orion said, his voice gentle like he sensed her nervousness. "How did you become a weaver? Did your parents teach you?" The question made Evelyn's throat tighten with old grief. "My mother taught me the basics before she died. She and my father were both from the Frost Peak pack. He was a beta warrior. She was an omega with the gift of sight, visions of the future. They died in an avalanche when I was 12, out on a winter patrol. My mother had seen the avalanche coming in a vision, but went on the patrol anyway, because duty came first." "I'm sorry," Orion said quietly. "That must have been devastating." "It was. My uncle took me in afterward, my mother's older brother. He never wanted children of his own, and he definitely didn't want to raise his dead sister's orphaned daughter. He wasn't cruel exactly, but he made it clear I was a burden. When I developed my vision problems at 15, it just confirmed what he already believed, that I was defective and useless." "Your uncle sounds like a bitter man," Orion said, something hard in his voice, "and completely wrong about you. You're not useless, Evelyn. You're not defective. You're surviving despite obstacles that would break most people. That's strength, not weakness." Evelyn felt tears burn behind her useless eyes. "You don't know me. You're just being kind because you feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you," Orion said firmly. "I feel impressed by you. You were out in a blizzard, blind and disoriented, and you didn't just give up and die. You called for help. You trusted a complete stranger to guide you to safety. You're sitting here calmly talking to me instead of panicking about the situation. Those aren't the actions of someone weak or useless. Those are the actions of someone with remarkable courage and adaptability." The tears spilled over, tracking hot paths down Evelyn's cold cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen strength in her instead of deficiency. She didn't know what to say, how to respond to this stranger who was treating her like she mattered. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me, for saying that. for making me feel like maybe I'm not completely worthless." "You're not," Orion said, with absolute certainty. "And anyone who made you feel that way was wrong. You have value, Evelyn. Immense value. I can see it, even if you can't." They talked through the afternoon and into the evening, Orion carefully describing the cave so Evelyn could build a mental map of the space. It was larger than she'd thought, with a wide entrance that curved back into a deep chamber. Someone had clearly used it as a shelter before, leaving stacks of firewood, some preserved food, water containers, and blankets, probably a way station for border patrols. Orion told her about growing up in the northern mountains, about learning to navigate blizzards and respect the dangerous beauty of winter. His voice was rich and warm, painting pictures with words that helped Evelyn see even though her eyes couldn't. He described the way ice formed patterns on cave walls, how snow caught light and turned it into rainbows, how the northern territories held a harsh beauty that took your breath away. "You really love winter," Evelyn observed, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "Most wolves I know just tolerate it as something to survive." "Winter is honest," Orion said thoughtfully. "It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It's brutal and beautiful at the same time. It kills the weak, but makes the stronger. There's something pure about that, something I respect." "That's a very alpha way of looking at things," Evelyn said, and immediately regretted it when she felt him tense. "What makes you think I'm an alpha?" he asked carefully. Evelyn gestured vaguely in his direction. "Your size, for one thing. I could tell when I was holding on to you that you're massive, even for a wolf. Your voice carries authority, even when you're being gentle, and the way you move, the confidence in every step. That's not something betas or omegas typically have. You're used to being in charge." "Observant," Orion said, with what sounded like approval. "Most people don't notice those things, especially when they can't see. I've learned to pay attention to details others miss." Evelyn said, "When you can't rely on your eyes, you develop other ways of reading people. Voice inflection, breathing patterns, the way someone moves through space. You tell me a lot about yourself without meaning to." "And what do I tell you?" Orion asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. Evelyn considered her answer carefully. "You're powerful, but you don't abuse that power. You could have simply dragged me here, but instead you asked me to hold on and trusted me to follow. You describe things for me without making me feel helpless. You're patient in a way that speaks of someone who's used to responsibility. And underneath all that strength, you're lonely. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about searching for something you haven't found yet." The silence stretched between them, loaded with meaning. Finally, Orion spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "No one's ever read me that accurately before, especially not after knowing me for less than a day." "Maybe no one else was paying attention," Evelyn said softly. "Or maybe they were too busy looking at what you appear to be to see what you actually are." Orion moved closer, and Evelyn could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And what am I, Evelyn? What do you see when you look at me with those other senses you've developed?" "Someone kind," Evelyn said immediately. "Someone strong but gentle. Someone who carries heavy burdens and doesn't complain about the weight. Someone who'd make a good mate if he ever found the right person." "Maybe I already have," Orion murmured, so quietly Evelyn almost didn't hear him. He was careful not to mention his pack or his position, Evelyn noticed, which made her wonder what he was hiding. But she didn't push. Everyone was entitled to their secrets, and truthfully, she was enjoying getting to know him as just Orion, without titles or expectations complicating things. As night fell and exhaustion caught up with them, Orion banked the fire, and they settled in to sleep. Evelyn was acutely aware of him lying just a few feet away, could hear his steady breathing, could smell his distinctive scent of pine and winter air, and something uniquely male. Her wolf was more active than it had been in years, pressing against her consciousness, trying to tell her something important that Evelyn couldn't quite grasp. She woke sometime in the middle of the night to find her sight was starting to return in fragments. Everything was blurry and indistinct, but she could make out shapes and the glow of the fire's embers. She turned her head carefully and saw a large, dark shape. That must be Orion sleeping on the far side of the fire. And then her seer gift activated, sudden and overwhelming. Visions flooded her mind in rapid succession. She saw herself standing beside Orion, both of them dressed in formal robes, saw a massive palace built from stone and ice, saw herself wearing a crown of silver and winter flowers, saw Orion looking at her with such love and devotion. It made her heart ache. But she also saw danger, jealous faces, attempts on her life, a beautiful Omega with dark hair trying to poison her, pain and fear, and the constant threat of rejection. Evelyn gasped and sat up, her heart racing. The visions faded as quickly as they'd come, leaving her disoriented and frightened. What had that been? Why would she have visions of herself as some kind of queen? That made no sense. She was a broken Omega from a small pack. She had no future involving crowns or palaces or formal robes. Evelyn R. You all right? Orion's voice came from across the fire, alert and concerned. I'm fine, she lied. Just a bad dream. Go back to sleep. But she couldn't sleep after that. She lay awake for hours, her returning vision showing her the cave ceiling in increasing detail, while her mind replayed those impossible visions over and over. The second day dawned clearer, the blizzard finally exhausting itself. Evelyn's vision had returned enough that she could see fairly well, though everything still had a slightly fuzzy quality that would persist for another day or so. She could finally see Orion properly, and her breath caught in her throat. He was beautiful, stunningly, impossibly beautiful. Platinum blonde hair that fell to his shoulders, messy from sleep. Ice blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Strong features that looked like they'd been carved from marble. A powerful body that spoke of years of warrior training. He was easily 6 and 1.2 ft tall, broad-shouldered and muscular, and looking at him made Evelyn's mouth go dry. Your vision is back, Orion observed with a smile that did dangerous things to her heart rate. How do you feel? Better? Evelyn managed, trying not to stare at him and failing completely. Everything's still a bit blurry, but I can see well enough to walk safely now. Something flickered in Orion's eyes as he looked at her, something intense and possessive that made her shiver. Evelyn, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned yesterday, but the timing never seemed right. Dread pulled in Evelyn's stomach. Here it was, the moment where he'd tell her he was mated, or engaged, or otherwise unavailable. The moment where her brief fantasy of maybe having something with this incredible man would die. When I found you in the blizzard, Orion said slowly, I felt something, a connection, a pull that I've been searching for my entire adult life. You're my mate, Evelyn, my true mate, the one the moon goddess chose, for me. Evelyn's world tilted sideways. What? No, that's not possible. I'm just a broken Omega from a small pack. I can't be your true mate. Why not? Orion asked, moving closer. Because you have a vision condition, because some idiots in your pack told you that you were defective. None of that matters, Evelyn. The mate bond doesn't care about perfect health or political status. It cares about souls that complement each other, and my soul recognized yours the moment I heard you cry for help. But you don't even know me, Evelyn protested, backing away, even though part of her wanted to move closer. We've spent one day together. You can't possibly be sure. I've spent 26 years looking for my mate, Orion said. I've met hundreds of Omegas. None of them felt right. None of them made my wolf respond the way you do. I know you're scared. I know this seems sudden, but I also know that you're mine, and I'm yours, and running from that won't change it. Evelyn's hands were shaking. The visions from last night suddenly made terrible sense. Crown and palace and formal robes. Who are you really? She whispered. And don't say just Orion, because I know there's more to it than that. Orion met her eyes steadily. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Frost Pack, the largest and most powerful pack in the Northern Territories. I was on my way back from a diplomatic mission when the blizzard hit. My wolf sensed you were in danger and forced me to change direction to find you. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to see me as just a man, not a title. Evelyn felt like she couldn't breathe. Alpha King. He was an Alpha King, and he thought she was his mate. This was impossible. This was a disaster. This was going to end in heartbreak and humiliation when his pack and council saw what a poor match she was. I need to go home, Evelyn said, moving toward the cave entrance on shaking legs. I need to get back to my pack. This is too much. I can't process this. Evelyn, wait. Orion reached for her, but she dodged his hand, her improving vision giving her enough awareness to avoid his touch. Thank you for saving my life, she said formally, her voice breaking. But I can't be what you need. I'm nobody. I'm broken. When your pack sees me, when they realize what you've claimed, they'll reject me. You'll reject me, and I can't survive that. I barely survived being unwanted by my own pack. I won't put myself through it again with yours. She ran from the cave before he could stop her, her vision just clear enough to navigate the snow-covered landscape. The blizzard had passed, and she could see familiar landmarks in the distance. She knew which direction led home. She just had to get there before Orion could follow, before he could try to convince her that impossible dreams could come true. But she could feel it already. The mate bond that had snapped into place between them, invisible and undeniable. It pulled at her even as she ran, making every step away from him physically painful. Her wolf was howling in protest, demanding she go back to their mate, but Evelyn ignored it. She'd learned years ago that wanting something didn't mean you could have it. Better to run now than be rejected later when reality set in. She made it back to her small cabin at the edge of Frost Peak territory by nightfall, exhausted and heartbroken and more alone than ever. Her uncle showed up an hour later, banging on her door and demanding to know where she'd been. The human village sent word that you never arrived for the delivery. Marcus snarled when she let him in. I thought you died in the storm. I was about to send a search party. I got caught in the blizzard and took shelter in a cave, Evelyn said tonelessly. I'm fine. The blankets are probably buried in snow somewhere, but I'll remake them. Marcus studied her with sharp eyes. Something happened. You look different. What aren't you telling me? Nothing. Evelyn lied. I'm just tired. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Her uncle left, still suspicious, but Evelyn didn't care. She collapsed into bed and cried herself to sleep, the mate bond aching in her chest, like a physical wound. Orion was probably already regretting his impulsive claim, probably relieved she'd run before he had to explain to his pack why he'd tried to mate with a defective Omega from a nobody pack. The next 3 days were torture. The mate bond pulled at her constantly, making her physically ill with the need to go to Orion. She could feel his emotions through the bond, concern and frustration and hurt and determination. He was looking for her. She knew he was, but she kept her head down and avoided anywhere he might search. Her uncle cornered her on the 4th day. The Alpha King of the Northern Frost Pack sent a delegation to our Alpha. He's looking for an Omega named Evelyn, who saved his life during the blizzard. He wants to meet with her. Everyone's talking about it. They're saying you're the Omega he's searching for. Evelyn's stomach dropped. I didn't save his life. He saved mine. He doesn't seem to see it that way, Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with sudden avarice. This is an incredible opportunity. If the Alpha King favors you, if he wants to ally with our pack, we could benefit enormously. You're not going to waste this by hiding in your cabin like a coward. I'm not a bargaining chip for political alliances, Evelyn said sharply, and I'm not meeting with him. Tell the delegation I'm not interested. You don't get to decide that, Marcus snapped. I'm your guardian until you're mated. I say you meet with the Alpha King. You owe this pack after all the years we've supported your useless existence. The words hurt, but Evelyn was used to them. Fine, set up a meeting, but don't expect anything to come of it. He'll realize his mistake soon enough. The meeting was arranged for the next day in the Frost Peak Pack's main hall. Evelyn, dressed in her plainest dress, left her white blonde, hair in a simple braid, wore no jewelry or makeup. She wanted Orion to see exactly what he was getting. If he persisted in this madness, a plain, damaged Omega with no status and no prospects. When she walked into the hall, Orion was there with 2 of his elite guard. He was dressed formally in rich clothes that screamed wealth and power, every inch the Alpha King. But when his ice-blue eyes landed on her, they softened with relief and something warmer. Evelyn, he said, moving toward her. Thank the moon goddess. I've been looking for you for days. Why did you run? Why won't you accept that we're mates? Everyone in the hall was staring. Her uncle, her Alpha, the elite guard, various pack members who'd come to witness the spectacle. Evelyn felt her face burn with embarrassment. Because it's not real, she said quietly. You felt grateful that I survived. You felt responsible for me because you saved my life. That's not the same as a genuine mate bond. Once you have time to think, clearly you'll realize I'm not suitable as your Luna. I'm broken, remember? You're not broken, Orion said intensely, reaching for her hands. And this isn't gratitude or responsibility. This is recognition. My soul knew yours the moment we met. Why can't you believe that? Because I've spent my entire life being told I'm not good enough, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. Because people don't choose me. They tolerate me at best. Why would the Alpha King be any different? Why would you want me when you could have any Omega in the Northern Territories? Beautiful Omegas with perfect health and powerful families and everything I'm not. I don't want any Omega in the Northern Territories, Orion said firmly. I want you, the woman who survived terrible injury and learned to thrive anyway. The woman who keeps her promises even in dangerous weather. The woman who trusted a stranger to save her life. The woman who creates beauty with her hands and sees paths others miss. I want you, Evelyn, not some theoretical perfect Omega. You. Evelyn wanted desperately to believe him, but fear held her paralyzed. Your pack will never accept me. Your council will reject me. I'm nobody from nowhere with nothing to offer. My pack will accept who I choose, Orion said with absolute authority. My counsel serves me, not the other way around. And you have everything to offer yourself. That's all I need." "But what about when I go blind again?" Evelyn asked desperately. "What about the next sunny day with fresh snow? What about when I can't see for days and I'm useless to you?" "Then I'll be your eyes," Orion said simply, "just like you'll be my conscience and my heart and my home. That's what mates do, Evelyn. We complement each other. We cover each other's weaknesses and celebrate each other's strengths. Your occasional blindness doesn't make you useless. It makes you someone who understands darkness and appreciates light. That's valuable." Evelyn felt her defenses crumbling. He was saying everything she'd always wanted to hear, but never believed anyone would say to her. "I'm scared," she admitted in a whisper. "I'm so scared of believing in this and having you change your mind." "Then come with me," Orion said gently. "Come to my pack for 1 month. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that I mean every word I've said. If after a month you still think this is a mistake, I'll let you go. But give me a chance to prove myself. Give us a chance to be what we're meant to be." Evelyn looked at her uncle, who was nodding vigorously. Looked at her Alpha, who clearly saw political advantage in this alliance. Looked at the pack members watching with expressions ranging from shock to excitement to jealousy. Then she looked at Orion, at his ice-blue eyes filled with hope and determination, and something that looked a lot like love. Her seer gift flickered, showing her 2 paths, one where she said no and spent the rest of her life alone and hollow, always wondering what might have been. One where she said yes and faced challenges and danger, but also love and belonging and purpose. The choice was terrifying, but it was also obvious. 1 month, Evelyn said, her heart pounding. "I'll give you 1 month to prove this is real. But Orion, if you hurt me, if you make me regret trusting you, I'll never forgive you." Orion's smile was brilliant and full of relief. "You won't regret it. I swear on my title, on my pack, on my life itself. You won't regret choosing to trust me." The next month passed in a blur of new experiences that left Evelyn's head spinning. Orion's palace was enormous and intimidating, built from gray stone and ice that sparkled in the winter sun. His pack was huge, hundreds of wolves who all seemed curious about their Alpha King's mysterious new mate. His elite guard was professional but welcoming, particularly Finn and River and Sage, who made efforts to befriend her. The first week was the hardest. Evelyn felt completely out of her depth, surrounded by wealth and sophistication she'd never experienced. The palace had more rooms than her entire pack's main building. The clothes Orion's staff provided were finer than anything she'd ever owned. The food was elaborate and beautifully presented, nothing like the simple meals she was used to. She made mistakes constantly, using the wrong fork at formal dinners, not knowing the proper way to address council members, getting lost in the palace's maze of corridors. Every error made her more convinced that she didn't belong here, that Orion would eventually see she wasn't cut out to be Luna. But Orion was patient with every mistake. When she used the wrong fork, he quietly switched his own to match hers, making it look intentional. When she got lost, he'd appear seemingly by chance to guide her without making her feel foolish. When she struggled with formal protocols, he'd practice with her privately until she felt confident. His elite guard helped too. Finn, a warrior with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, took it upon himself to teach her the palace layout. He'd walk with her for hours, describing landmarks and creating mental maps she could follow, even on her blind days. River, Finn's mate, taught her about pack politics and helped her navigate the complex social hierarchies. Sage, the oldest of the guard, and clearly Orion's closest advisor, shared stories about Orion's childhood that made Evelyn see him as more than just an intimidating alpha king. He was a serious pup, Sage told her one afternoon as they sat in the palace gardens. Always thinking, always planning. But he had this side he only showed to people he trusted completely. He'd play in the snow for hours, building elaborate ice sculptures. He'd sing when he thought no one was listening. He'd sneak extra food to the Omega pups who didn't have families. That's the real Orion underneath all the crown and responsibility. "Why are you telling me this?" Evelyn asked, genuinely curious. "Because I've watched him for 26 years, Sage said. I've seen him meet hundreds of potential mates. He was always polite, always respectful, but never interested. Not really. With you, it's different. He looks at you the way my mate looked at me, like you're the answer to every question he's ever had. I want you to know that what you're seeing is real. He's not playing games or fulfilling obligations. He chose you because his soul recognized yours." The words helped, but Evelyn's insecurity still lurked beneath the surface, especially when she had bad days where her vision failed her completely. The palace became a maze of darkness she couldn't navigate. She'd have to ask for help constantly, feeling like a burden on everyone around her. On those days, she'd retreat to the weaving room. Orion had set up for her where she could work by touch and feel useful despite her blindness. Orion courted her with patience and creativity. He took her on walks through his territory, describing everything in vivid detail on the days when her vision was compromised. He'd paint word pictures so clear she could almost see the frozen waterfalls and ice formations he loved. He asked about her weaving and genuinely listened when she explained techniques and patterns. He set up the workspace with careful attention to her needs, making sure everything was organized so she could find it by touch. He introduced her to his council gradually, standing beside her as a united front when some members questioned whether she was suitable as Luna. Elder Thomas had been particularly vocal in his disapproval. An Omega with impaired vision cannot properly fulfill Luna duties, Thomas had argued in a council meeting Evelyn attended. She'll be a liability in emergencies. She can't lead if she can't see. Orion's response had been cold and absolute. Luna Evelyn has survived permanent injury and learned to thrive despite it. That shows more leadership ability than most wolves born with perfect health. She sees what others miss and hears what others ignore. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. Anyone who cannot recognize that is free to challenge me for the alpha position. Otherwise, this discussion is closed. No one had challenged him. But Evelyn knew some council members still harbored doubts, particularly Thomas, who made his disapproval clear in subtle ways. He never pressured her for physical intimacy beyond holding hands or brief kisses, letting her set the pace for their relationship. On the nights when her vision failed and panic set in, he'd stay by her side for hours, talking her through the fear, reminding her that darkness was temporary and she was safe. Most importantly, he listened to her, really listened. When she talked about her fears and insecurities, he acknowledged them without dismissing them. When she mentioned having strange dreams that felt like visions, he took them seriously instead of calling her crazy like her uncle always had. When she had visions of danger, he took them seriously instead of calling her crazy. When her condition flared up and she went blind for 3 days, he stayed by her side and told her stories and made sure she never felt alone in the darkness. Evelyn found herself falling in love with him despite her best efforts not to, falling for the way he treated everyone in his pack with respect, falling for how he'd play with pups in the snow with childish joy, falling for his dedication to justice and fairness, falling for the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. But doubt still lingered, particularly when she met Celeste, a beautiful Omega from a powerful allied pack who'd expected to become Orion's Luna. Celeste was everything Evelyn wasn't. Tall and elegant with perfect vision and flawless features and impressive family connections. She made her feelings about Evelyn very clear. "You're just a curiosity to him," Celeste said one afternoon when she cornered Evelyn in the palace gardens. "A broken little Omega he feels sorry for. Once the novelty wears off, he'll realize what a mistake he made choosing you over someone appropriate." The words hit every one of Evelyn's insecurities. She tried to dismiss them, but they festered, growing larger in her mind. What if Celeste was right? What if Orion's interest was just pity, disguised as attraction? Things came to a head 3 weeks into her stay. Evelyn woke one morning with her vision gone again, triggered by an especially bright day with fresh snow. She was disoriented and frustrated, hating that this condition still controlled her life. When Orion came to check on her, she snapped at him. "You should have chosen someone like Celeste, someone who doesn't need constant accommodation, someone who won't embarrass you by being blind half the time, someone who actually deserves to be Luna." Orion was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hands in his. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." He guided her through the palace, describing their path so she could build a mental map. They ended up in what he said was his private study. He placed her hands on something cold and metallic. "This is my crown," Orion said quietly, "the symbol of my authority as Alpha King. Know what it weighs?" Evelyn shook her head. "Too much," Orion said. "Some days it feels like it's crushing me. The responsibility of thousands of lives, the constant political maneuvering, the weight of tradition and expectation. I've worn this crown for 4 years, and I've never met anyone who saw past it to the man underneath. Until you." He moved her hands to touch his face, his strong features warm beneath her fingers. "You didn't care that I was Alpha King. You argued with me about whether you deserved me. You ran from me rather than trying to trap me into mating. You see me as just Orion, not a title or a political opportunity that's precious beyond measure." "But Celeste," Evelyn started. "Celeste wants my crown," Orion interrupted. "She wants the power and status of being Luna. She doesn't want me. She's made that clear in a dozen different ways. You're the only one who's ever made me feel like I matter as a person, not just as Alpha King." He pressed her hand over his heart. "You think your blindness makes you less? It makes you more. It means you learn to see with your heart instead of your eyes. It means you value people for their character rather than their appearance. It means you understand that strength comes in many forms. These aren't weaknesses, Evelyn. They're gifts. And I'm grateful every day that the moon goddess chose you for me." Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she whispered. "I've been trying not to, but I love you so much it scares me." "Then stop being scared," Orion said, his voice rough with emotion. "Trust in us. Trust in the bond. Trust that I see you, really see you in ways that have nothing to do with vision. You're my mate, Evelyn, my Luna, my everything, and I'm never letting you go." She kissed him then, blind and crying, and completely certain for the first time that this was real, that he meant every word, that she was finally, impossibly home. The mating ceremony was held under the full moon 2 weeks later. Evelyn wore a dress of white silk adorned with crystals that caught the moonlight and made her look like winter personified. Her white blonde hair was crowned with silver and ice flowers. She could see clearly that night, her vision perfect, and she used that gift to memorize every detail of Orion looking at her with love and wonder as they exchanged vows. When he marked her, the mate bond settled into both their souls with a rightness that took her breath away. She could feel his love, absolute and unwavering, his certainty that she was exactly who he needed, his gratitude that she'd been brave enough to trust him. And he could feel her love, her lingering awe that this was real, her determination to be worthy of the gift she'd been given. "You don't have to be worthy," Orion murmured against her neck, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. "You already are. You've always been. I'm the one who gets to spend the rest of our lives being grateful you chose to trust me." Years later, when young Omegas came to Luna Evelyn feeling broken or defective because of their own limitations, she'd smile and tell them her story about going blind in a blizzard and following a wolf's howl to safety, about meeting a man who saw strength in her weakness and value in her differences, about learning to trust when trust had been destroyed. "Your limitations don't define you," she'd tell them, taking their hands in hers. "They're just part of your story. Sometimes the things we think make us broken are actually what make us perfect for our purpose. I went blind and learned to see with other senses. That made me exactly what Orion needed. Someone who saw his heart instead of his crown. Your differences might be exactly what someone else needs. Don't give up on yourself just because others can't see your value. The right person will see you clearly even when you can't see yourself, and those struggling Omegas would leave her presence standing taller, believing that maybe their broken pieces could fit together with someone else's to create something beautiful. That darkness was temporary, but love was permanent. That sometimes you had to be blind to truly see what mattered. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more werewolf romance tales featuring true mates, overcoming limitations, and love that sees beyond the surface. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Leave a comment below telling me what you thought of Evelyn and Orion's story, and what kind of werewolf romance you'd like to see next. Your support means everything and helps me create more content like this.